Hello everybody, I'm so sorry this video took so damn long to get out. You know what I'm like, I can't keep focused on anything. I'm sure I'm a bit like Armoured Skeptic, I've got those two bloody idiots on my shoulders telling me what to do. And I really don't need that. I've got two daughters who do it already anyway, so... at one point, while recording this video, I found myself actually reading up about some mountain in Australia for 3 days, and only then reminded myself that I'm already doing a video on this. Anyway, back to this video. I'm going to leave you to it, and I'll chat with you at the end. Cheers folks, have fun.
There is a mystery from the dawn of civilization. At multiple sites, from Turkey down to southern Israel and possibly beyond, ancient towers, around 10 to 11,000 years old, have been discovered, the most famous of which is the so-called Watchtower of Jericho. Not only are these towers found in many of our first settlements, they also appear to be among, if not the, very first structures built at these ancient sites. Academia view them as religious structures, around which civilization developed. In this trilogy of videos, I want to take an alternative look at these structures, and the roles I believe they played in our history, rather than the invention of religion, leading to the invention of settled life and civilization. I believe it was simple advancements in humanity's oldest profession, which led to the foundation of the world's first cities. This is the story of the age of the tower builders, and how the towers they constructed formed the foundation of civilization. At just under 30 feet tall, the Tower of Jericho would have dwarfed the usual constructions undertaken by nomadic hunter-gatherers, who would normally build temporary shelters. So, understanding this structure is a major step in understanding the time between nomadic and settled life. Academics have a simplistic timeline on how and why the tower was constructed, and how it led to the very first settlements. Step 1. The already religious hunter-gatherer population regularly stopped here, to take advantage of the constant spring, which still to this day provides water for the modern city. As such, the location became deified, with holy ceremonies taking place. For sky deities it is presumed the nomads worshipped. Step 2. As the religious experience evolved, so too did the needs of that religion. The holy men of the time instructed all the local nomads to construct platforms. From these, the priests could call upon their gods, making a special plea on behalf of those who constructed the monument. Step 3. With religion becoming ever more important to the human race, they begin to spend more and more time near these centers of worship, accidentally or deliberately inventing early farming methods. Now they lack the time to roam after game. Step 4. With settlement comes different levels of importance to the community, which in turn becomes a class or hierarchical system, with priest-kings at the top. However, did we really need the invention of religion to begin settled life? Not to mention the fact that the evidence for a belief in the divine is simply an interpretation of scant evidence at best. The evidence consisting of works of art that don't appear to represent anything that existed in the physical world, along with the fact that they buried their dead. Yet, this is enough to convince the majority of academics that, not only did our ancestors worship the divine, but also that such beliefs became so important that we stopped hunting and settled into city life. What if humans didn't abandon the hunt? The hunt merely evolved, as a result of the environment and the circumstances they lived under. The mountains to the north protected the region from the harsh, freezing winds of the Mammoth Steppe, leaving it to bathe in the gentle heat sweeping up from the Arabian deserts to the south. At the same time, the frequent mountain rains would wash down into rivers that still exist to this day, taking with them life-giving silt, feeding the plains and valleys below. Its location and the lush vegetation made the region a major crossroads, where humans and animals alike passed through on their migrations between the savannas of Africa, the rainforests of Asia, and the green steppe of Europe. That said, this was a world where it was becoming more difficult to maintain a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. The big beasts that were not already extinct were well on their way to becoming so. Those animals that were left tended to be smaller, traveled in smaller herds, or became so specialized to particular environments that they didn't migrate across continents. It was also a time of drought, making it increasingly important to have direct access to drinking water, just like the spring found in Jericho. Since the dawn of humanity, hunters had used observation points to scout out prey from a distance, be it a hill, a tree, or an outcrop of rock. Now, in these lean times, they needed one near their supply of water and vegetation, unwilling to leave it as they could not guarantee where they would find such an ideal location. But the land was relatively flat, so they had to create their own observation point. At first, they probably made a simple mound of dirt. However, now they were barely traveling, they had the time to invent and create. Eventually, the stone tower was built, so any need for the group to roam even a small territory was gone. Their population would have grown at a greater rate, and they were probably joined by other groups who were related via whatever form of marriage existed at the time. So, they ended up with a booming population, who had more time to devote to community projects, such as construction and gathering of edible plants and crops, all while waiting for a call from the tower. The spotters, perched on the tower, would look out for clouds of dust, kicked up by wandering herds, the calls of predators, or a maelstrom of scavenger birds in the sky. They would then call down to the settlement, who could then quickly assemble a hunting party. And so there we have it. Civilization was the result of the gradual evolution of humanity's oldest profession. A more energy-efficient form of hunting, in response to environmental challenges. This new form of hunting then forced an evolution in gathering, with crops being transplanted near the settlement and cultivated, which then evolved into more advanced forms of farming. At the same time, now that easily assembled and dismantled shelters were no longer necessary, these too evolved into more permanent structures. No sudden surge of invention and no need for divine inspiration. It was a gradual evolution of hunting and gathering, in a gradually changing world. Jericho is one of many sites known as a tell. There are approximately 5,000 tells in Israel and the West Bank alone, yet only around 2% of these have been subject to any archaeological study. While most of those studied are far more recent settlements, there are many others given the same foundation date as Jericho and Göbekli Tepe. All of these have an immediate water source and all have at least one tower. At one small settlement, 5 towers were discovered. It is unlikely that multiple groups would come together due to religion, only to then build their own place of worship, which required a lot of work. They were also not built in any sort of defensive pattern. The tower's stairwell is accessed through a hole that looks out into the town, and is so narrow that you can only crawl up it. Doesn't seem an elegant way for a holy priest to climb up the tower, while being observed by the town, especially since an exterior staircase around the back of the structure would solve this issue, and be simpler to construct. The houses at such sites are circular structures, as would be expected for this era. They are also not in any particular pattern, but they are in clusters around the early site. This could be a sign of the different nomadic groups settling in their own little spots, only merging as their population grew and intermixed. The houses point to one other indication, that these communities were not brought together by priest kings. All these homes are around the same size, with no sign of a grander home for any kind of leadership. This indicates that even 1,000 years after the first buildings were constructed, there was no elite, a very unlikely result had the mainstream view of events occurred. There are other tell-like sites scattered around the larger Near East region, which cover stone circles and similar monuments. The most famous of which is of course, Göbekli Tepe. Like the previously mentioned tells, these sites have only had a small part of the total area excavated. We do however, have radar and satellite scans revealing the presence of more circular structures at Göbekli Tepe. What if these circles are not like what has already been discovered? Perhaps, these scans are showing the presence of ancient stone houses and towers. I consider this for one simple reason. I've always thought that Göbekli Tepe might be an ancient university of some kind. A place to preserve and to teach information, needed to build a civilization. Looking at the carvings on these beautiful pillars, I cannot help but to think that they seem to depict many of the animals, which would aid a spotter, when looking for signs of potential prey for the community.
Right folks, you made it. Congratulations. That brings episode 1 to a close. In episode 2, I'll be looking at what became of the towers when the megafauna died out, changing the way humans hunted again. And according to my theory, it is this change that would set us along the course towards finding religion. Feel free to let me know what you think of the theory so far. You can find me either on Twitter or just go straight to the comment section here. I do actually read all the comments. I've been rather naff at replying to them, but I am going to have more time on my hands now, so yep, go to the comments or Twitter and I should be able to get back to you. Also, let me know what you think of the video itself. Do you prefer it with the computer voice? Do you prefer it with the female computer voice? Or do you want to hear my croaky voice? I'm not fussed, let me know. Until next time, thank you for coming and viewing this video. Please like and subscribe if you actually liked it, or do none of that if you want. Entirely up to you. Thanks very much folks, and I shall see you all later.